Yes, we are back with a continuation of our Guest of the Month. Guest of the Month is a break from our usual programming of the League of the Genuine. And during this episode, we have a special guest who we host and have a conversation around our pet subject of counterfeits, fake products, substandard products. We are pleased to host a senior citizen, an ex-chairman of the board of Uganda Telecom, former executive director of the Housing Finance Bank, and many other titles that he holds. Join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Patrick Kabonero. You are welcome.
Thank you very much.
You had disappeared from the public face until we fished you out to come and talk about this important subject. How does it feel to be back?
Well, I haven't really disappeared as such. I'm not in the public arena, but I'm available. I can be reached when you want me.
You can
like
be
I've
reached.
been reached, yes.
The last time I was working closely with you on the same premises, somewhere on Renzori Courts, I think that time you were still with the Uganda Telecom. But it's a pleasure to have you back, to see you again.
Thank you very
You're
much.
keeping well. You're in retirement, but looks like you have a good retirement plan because you're looking in good shape. Thank you so much for joining this discussion. This show is intended to promote awareness about the dangers of counterfeits, of fake products, of substandard. And the idea is that it is a collective effort. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has a role to play in this. So we would like to start a little bit by knowing who you are. Many people may not have seen you. Who is Patrick Kabonero?
First of all, I must thank you for picking on me and to talk about this subject. I'm Patrick Kabonero. I'm, as you said, retired from public jobs. It's coming to 10 years since I retired. I used to work with Housing Finance Bank as the executive director. By the time I retired, I had worked with Housing Finance for a period of 40 years.
Wow.
That's why I started working, and that's why I retired. Of course, I did some other jobs, like you are saying. You last met me at Renzori Courts,
Yes.
where UTL was housed. For 9 years, I was chairman of UTL. Earlier, I had been chairman of UPTC, the
Uganda Post and Telecom.
No, UPTC, Uganda Post and Telecommunications Company, which gave birth to
UTL.
UPL being Posts,
Post, yeah.
and Post Bank, and UCC.
Communications Commission.
Yes, yeah, we used to be the regulators at the time.
While you are operators.
While we were operators, we were also regulators.
You started working in 1973. In 1973 with Housing Finance Company. In 1973 we had a population of about 10 million people.
Yes.
And right now we are almost 45, 42 million. So my question to you is, can you tell us how Uganda has changed from the 1973 as a young man, you start working, to now? What do you see? Are you seeing the same country, or is a totally different thing now?
In 1973, when I started working, Amin had just taken over government, and the effects of his takeover had not been yet felt. For example, when I got a job with Housing Finance, I was getting a very good salary. You know, Housing Finance was being managed by CDC, Commonwealth Development Corporation, and my salary was excellent. I was so proud. But 3 years down the road, that salary could not take me through the month. It could only take me for 15 days. And
the currency had been devalued?
Currency had been devalued, and yet salaries were not increasing in accordance. So the salary wouldn't be enough for you. And it cut across the entire population. That's when Magendo started.
Magendo, the black market.
The black market, because there was scarcity, and in order for people to survive, they had to get some fake means.
Because
of
government
survival.
was controlling supply of essential
Government was
products.
not controlling as such, but producers were not producing enough. Goods were not available. So, and that raised prices, and incomes were not increasing accordingly.
So there was stagnation.
So there was stagnation. The economy was going down, and people started faking means of survival.
So you're saying that it is in the 70s, during the collapse of the economy, that the seeds of faking, maybe counterfeiting, were sowed?
Yes, that's when things started going bad.
So you had to find a back door to get a supply, and in there,
yes,
of course, people then started
people would
duplicating.
Get those who accessed manufacturers got pieces of paper which they would sell to consumers, and then consumers would go and struggle and pay to get those goods, and people would get free money, as it were, without working for it.
But I don't think the problem was as bad as it is now, even if the seeds were sowed at that time. What do you think could have gone wrong? Why is it that almost everywhere you turn now, from hair products to medicines to milk to food, everything is being faked? What do you think went wrong?
People who produce, who supply either counterfeits or inferior commodities, take advantage of inadequate regulation, because if enforcement is limited, you have criminals out there who supply, and some governments keep a blind eye, like China, for example. Chinese products, there are lots of counterfeit Chinese products. I personally have been to China, and when you are there, they tell you the truth. They say, if you are from Africa, you will not afford this good quality good unless you are from America. Are you from America? Because they may think
say you're black American.
You are black American. If you are not, you may not afford this. Say no. Give me what you tell me what it costs. But otherwise, they already see you as somebody that cannot afford, and therefore want to sell you low quality products.
But who makes us to be looked at as people who want the fakes or the cheap products? You think it's the Chinese who are imposing it on us, or it is us who make them to? It's us who demand for the fake or the cheap versions.
We demand, of course, counterfeits. I was going on to tell you that little regulation, a ready market, because people can't afford, like the Chinese know that many Africans can't afford good quality products because of the price. Then, of course, ignorance. Consumers are ignorant. They don't know what is counterfeit. or yeah, they go.
They can't
They go
differentiate.
by price. They're guided by price more than quality, and they end up consuming even dangerous products in the process.
But my question is, from Amin's time, we go through the war, Obote's time, and then we have a long period of stability, a long period of progress, a long period of growth and development. Why is it that the business of faking, of counterfeits, has grown so exponentially, even where we no longer have the shortages you are talking of during Amin's time, even where we have more literacy, people are more educated now, income has gone up, but the counterfeit business is just growing.
You see, there's, right from Amin's time, there has been a gradual process of moral degeneration. People's morals have gone down. Right from that time, it has, people's morals were not as bad in Amin's time as they are today, because it has been a process. You know, parents teaching themselves, teaching their children poor morals, and now children who were born during Obote 2 have children. And
So three generations.
Three generations, and they're not teaching them very good behavior either. You know, it is, social values have gone to the dogs. People are praised not because of who they are, but what they have. And people who you know have acquired wealth through dubious means are respected by society.
And praised.
And praised. And you know, this has had a very bad effect on our community. So it has been a gradual process.
And it's still ongoing.
Unfortunately.
Some people, somebody confronted me and said that, you see, the counterfeiters are working smart, okay? They find innovative ways of surviving and selling something and making their families survive. They can look after their children. So when you talk about morals, how do you make the counter argument to this person who says that morally I should be able to fend for my family and look after them? Therefore, if I find means of being clever and smart, what's wrong with that? How do you answer to such a person?
You see, the person who talks like that justifies what I've just said, that the morals went down. For him, he does not see that counterfeiting is destroying our society. It is destroying our community.
And the economy.
Yeah, and the economy. He doesn't see that it destroys the economy. He doesn't see that it destroys people's lives. He doesn't see that people don't benefit out of it. It destroys people's morals. And, you know, you'll find a person like that one telling his son or his daughter that it is good to counterfeit. In other words, telling that person that you should do immoral things, you should do criminal things, because counterfeits are criminal acts. Those who produce counterfeits and supply counterfeits are criminals, in my view. I don't know, you are a lawyer, you should know better.
No, I agree. Yes. I agree with you.
Yes. So if somebody tries to justify such actions, should be condemned.
In this counterfeit conversation, don't you think brands have some responsibility in ensuring that they protect us from counterfeits? Because so many products are on the market counterfeited, and you don't see enough action from the brands.
Of course, I said earlier that counterfeiters take advantage of weak regulation. And I don't think, because regulation is very expensive and can only be managed by governments, but even government would find it extremely expensive and difficult to control if there is no support from the public. What surprises me is that, you know, people whose brands are being counterfeited, keeping quiet is to the detriment of their brands. They should come out and follow those who counterfeit their products and bring them to book. And I'm sure there is a law that can have them convicted or their products being taken off the market. In Uganda, there are certain regulators who work very hard. I know, like even consumers, like National Drug Authority and
Bureau of Standards.
You know, Bureau of Standards.
They have challenges.
They have a lot of challenges. I've heard from them before talk quite a lot, but you know, one thing that surprised me at one time was for them to concede that 54% of the goods we consume in this market are counterfeits or substandard goods. Where are they? Why can't they find out? It means they lack capacity, because it's not a mean job to police
the whole country and all border points.
Yeah, and those who get involved in counterfeits know that the borders are porous, that people are corrupt.
So corruption is a major factor.
Yeah, it is. It is. So they take advantage, and they bring in. So it is important. It is important for brand owners to play a very important role and stop those who counterfeit their products.
Not to take a back seat.
They shouldn't take a back seat. They should come out and fight.
Mr. Kabonero, the URA is celebrating 30 years this year in existence. And there is always a challenge they have. On the one hand, they must maximize public revenue collection so that public services can be offered. But then on the other hand, there is the public safety element. So in the mix, sometimes they end up taxing and collecting taxes from counterfeit businesses. What is your view about taxation of counterfeit business?
Does URA know that they are actually taxing counterfeits, or they do it in ignorance?
A lot of times information will be available that a particular consignment of counterfeit has come in. But what usually happens, by the time the brand owner goes to either gets a court order to confiscate the goods or whatever, the person has been required to pay taxes first. The goods have got to be cleared to come out. They can't come out before taxes are paid.
I really think URA should never do that, because
so in some cases it's that. In some other cases, maybe they don't know. But as a principle, should we as a country be taxing counterfeit businesses?
No. Counterfeits should be confiscated and destroyed. And I think that's what regulators usually do. They confiscate the goods and destroy them. So how do you tax goods which, with your knowledge that they are counterfeits, how do you tax them?
The argument sometimes which is made, Mr. Kabonero, is that China developed. It is a developed country and it makes counterfeit. So why are we denying our poor countries a chance to also develop? Is that the development model?
I don't know whether, I'm not very, I know I've been a victim actually of Chinese counterfeits. One time I went to China and bought very good golf balls. and I found them fairly cheap. I was also
And you were duped.
I was duped. I saw very good golf balls. I said, oh, this is Titleist Pro V balls.
Yeah, it's called Titleist, yes.
Yeah, Pro V balls. I bought like 4 packets and packed them and brought them here.
So you came to the golf course, what happened?
I found, when I tried to treat them, I found they were not. They were not
Did it
proper
burst or break or something?
No, they would not move properly. Say a golf ball, there is a way a golf ball moves when you hit it. But these balls were not
Were yours moving backwards or forward?
No,
What
they
happened?
are not heavy enough. They don't fly as you to destinations you expected them to go. They are bad balls, very bad balls.
So, but somebody is saying that China has developed like
but
that.
I
with
don't.
those...
For me, I tend to, because you see, counterfeits thrive in ignorance, where consumers are ignorant, and where consumers are poor. I tend to think, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think counterfeits in China maybe are made for outside markets. I don't know whether they are made for their own markets, because Chinese seem to be very protective of their own people.
They have a very strong economic police or something. They arrest those guys.
Yes.
I think
I think they protect their own population, but they don't mind these people bringing these goods to other societies.
I think before we blame them, we don't mind, because we are the ones who import those fakes, ship them here. Because if we didn't order for them, they would not ship.
I'm telling you, we are gullible consumers because we lack adequate regulation. We are ignorant consumers, so we are ready to receive their goods. Yes. I mean, we don't have sufficient protection. They find their way to our markets. And ideally, before goods come to this country, they are supposed to be inspected, assuming that they pass through the right channels.
The normal channels, yes.
Yes. And when they are here, before they are supplied in shops, they are supposed to be regulated by Uganda Bureau of Standards. But I think
there's a gap. There's a gap there in regulation. I do agree that poor regulation is one of the big drivers.
Poor regulation and poverty by consumers because they cannot afford
affordability.
Affordability. They cannot afford genuine products, and then, of course, lack of knowledge. The consuming society
lacks knowledge. That's why we have this show here to sensitize and give knowledge to consumers, because we believe that when you give information to the consumer, then they'll be empowered and they'll vote with their wallet to go for the genuine. Now let's leave China alone. Let me take you to a more familiar area. You have been a banker all your life. There is a notion that a lot of the counterfeit business is financed by the banks, and that therefore the banks bear a responsibility in the growth of counterfeit business. What is your take on that view? That banks are not doing enough, they're just giving money, and people bring whatever rubbish and sell. Even the bankers themselves go and buy it unknowingly.
Well, I think that is that may be unfair to the banks, because it may happen, but banks follow documentation. Banks will not finance goods which have not been inspected if they have been imported. Usually, goods should have been inspected by, say, SGS or another inspection agency that inspects goods before they leave the country of export. And if there is documentation which satisfies the bank, then you cannot hold the bank to blame for having financed such goods. And banks finance using letters of credit, and letters of credit will have gone through all that process. So I don't know where...
That is on business,
yeah.
which has documentation.
Yeah.
That
I
you're
don't
talking
think
about.
banks finance business without documentation.
But the banks have this principle of know your customer. In other words, aside from documentation, because documentation, for example, for pre-shipment inspection could be forged, or they could just be stamped, doesn't, as part of the KYC, don't you think a bank ought to find out what business this person is engaging in? If you're going to import, for example, and then you say, I'm going to import kiwi shoe polish, as an example, shouldn't a bank find out whether the import that you bring in is authorized, is the owner of the brand consents to that import? Because you could be manufacturing out of some dingy place in China or India and counterfeiting the genuine kiwi, and you bring it in.
And that's what I'm saying. Really, if there is a pre-shipment inspection, that information should be found out.
Before you give the money?
Before, yeah. I mean, if it is an LC, usually the goods, it's when you have received the goods that you release the money. So
that is LC.
Yeah.
But sometimes the banks will give money as working capital. They give you cash.
No, working capital. You see, working capital, unless it is internal, working capital is not for import.
They will get working capital, puts his house, gets 500 million and goes and imports, and the bank wouldn't know.
But then, you know, banks finance for a particular purpose. If somebody puts his house, if I give you a loan to build a house and you build it and you sell it, then you can hold the bank to blame for having used that money to import goods.
But I think okay,
I don't know, unless you give me a particular example.
Okay, let me give another one.
Yes.
I am sure you are aware that we've been having so many incidents of buildings collapsing.
Yes.
And we have had experts here speaking,
yes,
from the National Building Review Board, from architects, engineers, from manufacturers of building materials.
Yes.
And all of them have said that the leading cause of the collapse of these buildings is the fake materials.
Yes.
And many of them have said that most of these sites, the plans were not approved. Now, many of these structures, many of these projects are being financed by banks.
That's very sad.
Because I would imagine that from documentation...
Those are incompetent. I mean, you find incompetence everywhere. I mean, I cannot really, you wouldn't find incompetent bankers. But if a banker finances a building without plans,
that is what I was going to talk about. This building which collapsed in Kisenyi.
I don't think you can take that as a standard thing, practice of banks. I think it would, even the employers of whoever would have got involved in such a transaction would have to bring him to book.
Because, Mr. Kabonero, this in the last 2 years, since COVID,
yes,
we have lost more than 20 people.
I know. You know, I'll tell you, I'm involved in, and I've been involved before in construction. What you are saying is very true. You find substandard materials being supplied, even by branded suppliers, by the way.
Yeah.
You'll find like cement suppliers at times supply cement which does not meet the standard.
It's fake. They just get the packaging, yes, and put in.
Yes. So if you are putting up a very, say, a storied building, you should test that cement yourself. There's a building where I've been involved recently. We were testing the cement, and at times we would find it inferior and reject it.
After it has built or
No,
before?
Before.
The problem is you'll test it before.
Yeah.
You leave and go to your retirement home, and the fundis and the guys who are mixing, they play games.
I will tell you, there is another building, and at the time I was still working with housing finance. I was involved in. And because you see, the consumer must also be vigilant, must also observe regulations. I was involved in that construction, and I used to have tests after every level
To check quality.
And I had a very competent structure engineer. And at a certain point, the tests showed that the cement mix had been compromised. I don't know whether by the builders or whether it was the quality of the cement. Because when it is already mixed, you can't know.
You cannot tell.
You cannot tell. And the standards were not so low, but what my structural engineer recommended, we were going to roof with tiles. Said, no, we can't roof with tiles anymore. We should now tone down and roof with the heavy tiles, which actually were more expensive, but didn't put a lot of weight
on the structure. So,
Yes.
so generally, how do you feel as somebody who has been in the financing of buildings, residential, commercial? We are now building houses not to promote safety, but it's like we are promoting injury and death. How do you feel that this is happening to a sector that you so passionately served, and what do we need to do to prevent that from the financing part, at least, which you understand? What should banks do now?
No, bank, you see, if you are going to finance a structure, particularly a high-rise structure, you have to get involved. I remember for me, by the time I left housing finance, we had started financing those structures. But what we had done was to employ an engineer, an in-house engineer, who would monitor
each project that you are financing.
Yes, right from the beginning, and work together with the developer. Because you have to do that, if you don't do it, you are bound to meet problems.
A lot of problems.
Yes.
Don't you think also there is a need, apart from banks getting engineers in-house, as you're saying, don't you think there's also a need to be strict with these suppliers? Shouldn't suppliers of fakes be blacklisted? Why should you supply here, the building collapses, people die, you supply another, and the bank is also giving money? Don't you think we need to blacklist in the procurement of these suppliers?
Who will do that?
No, if the bank, for example, you can blacklist by refusing to finance. You can say, because you participated in the other project.
You see, suppliers supply to the project.
And you finance the project.
Yes. Obviously, if somebody supplies fake materials fake materials.
Why should you give them money?
No, you don't. You shouldn't give them money when they have bought fake materials. You shouldn't give them money, and even your own money is at risk because you are financing a project which you have no collateral.
Because if the project collapses,
you lose.
You gave somebody $1 million to put up rentals or shops.
Yes.
When it collapses,
you lose.
It becomes a non-performing loan. You also lose.
Absolutely. So you should not. You should identify people who supply fake products, blacklist them, and if somebody is using them, then you shouldn't finance him. Wow.
In your 40 years at Housing Finance, how many projects did you finance, buildings, and how many collapsed?
None collapsed.
Are you sure? Maybe you need to check.
No, none collapsed.
They could be
during my
collapsing with these rains.
No, none collapsed.
None collapsed by the time you left.
No, none at all. We could have had other problems, like you know, we used to have. We would even have problems with valuers giving us reports, fake reports. You know, these. Somebody going and giving a report, and you rely on a valuer because he's registered, and you get a report, you finance a project, and at times the borrower defaults and you want to foreclose.
And the title which is given to the bank is the compound.
Yes.
The house
absolutely
is outside.
Yes.
So you come with your auctioneers and
Yes.
they ask you to stand outside.
Yes.
I did the very first case. I introduced actually the notion of professional indemnity, holding valuers
Yes.
on their professional indemnity
Yeah.
for making fake values.
Yes.
I did a case for one bank. And now valuers are more careful. They do not go and give whatever value, because if the bank loses, then they are required to pay.
Actually, I caused one customer to go to jail because of that.
I think that sends a message
Yes.
that is very risky. What about fake titles? Did you, during your time at the bank, because they are also rampant?
I think the situation has become very bad now, worse than it was when I was with, because we never encountered, we used to do a lot of due diligence.
Yeah, but you can go and check in the land office,
Yeah,
and they will give you a search and say it's okay. And then somebody else, as soon as you put a mortgage, somebody else comes with the original.
Yeah, but I never encountered those situations really, because I think the due diligence we used to
Was more thorough.
And that's why we had to get in-house professionals. That's why our legal department, for example, was big and strong. And we looked up to them to safeguard us from such happenings. And they knew that if
they made a wrong
they
opinion,
they would be held to blame. So they did a good job. They always did a good job. And that's why we also had an engineer, an in-house engineer, so that you don't ask an outsider whether the report he has given you is correct, or, you know, that one may be neither here nor there.
Now, we're coming to the close of this. Since we're talking about counterfeits generally, we've talked about buildings. I would like to know your personal encounter with counterfeits. I imagine maybe you're a dairy farmer. Have you encountered counterfeits in that area? Can you share your experience?
Yeah, there's been a lot of problems with the acaricide.
Acaricide, the one for the
Yes.
for the ticks.
The one for the ticks. When I was young, the acaricides used to work, and if ticks got used to one acaricide, then
you change.
Then you change, and we were guided by government, but acaricide ceased to work, and it was argued, it was said that acaricide ceased to work because of fake acaricide. People now mix tomato paste with some
engine oil and
you know, it's
so
very, very sad.
Do you think the problem is on the supply side or regulation side? Are the vets, do we have vets like that, like we used to have those days, doing their work in the villages, checking on what is happening?
Growing up, the things I used to see, I no longer see. I've been asking the same questions. What are the vets doing? It seems to be a government program for vets to visit farms and advise. And
so what's happening now?
Now everybody minds about himself. Nobody minds about you. So, for example, in my farm, I engage a veterinary person
Privately.
who visits my farm, who recommends what drugs to administer to the cattle, who tells me the acaricide to use, because I'm not a very big farmer, but I have some few cows. And if you don't attend to them, they die. So I privately engage a veterinary person.
To keep them alive.
To keep them alive.
But now, these fake acaricides and all these antibiotics, and if they are fake, tell us, does it affect the milk? Does it affect the meat? Are we safe?
We are not safe. We are definitely not safe. We are told that when, for example, you have dipped your cows, you should not milk and drink milk from them, because that milk is dangerous for 2 days.
So what's happening? They are dipping and milking.
They dip and milk.
Oh dear.
And nobody regulates that. They dip and milk and sell the milk, and I don't think the people who process the milk
are able to remove.
Or either test or remove and say this milk has been contaminated, therefore don't drink it, pour it.
But Patrick, how can that happen? I know you said that the morals decayed, but even if somebody is immoral, they have got to care about their survival. There is no immoral person who wants to die. Why is it that we appear to be having a collective suicide pact? Why would we do that to ourselves? What has happened?
It is, you can't believe it. Ignorance is a. You have seen people who have refused to take COVID vaccines. I mean, if you don't take a vaccine, you are a vulnerable person. But people are not taking vaccines, and you find people milking their cows and actually drinking that milk and even selling it.
Giving their own children.
Giving their own children. I think it is ignorance. You need to sensitize people so much so that they understand that it is dangerous. I think it is sensitization which is lacking.
Sensitization.
Yeah.
Apart from your experience in the dairy sector, any other experience with counterfeits, maybe in the home? Any product you've seen that maybe you now suspect because of a counterfeit experience that you would like to share about?
As you said, for me, I'm very, very particular with what I eat. And I am always telling my wife, but she tells me that at times she gets counterfeits. There is nothing that bothers me like food and medicine, because that's where you can die easily if you take counterfeits. So she fears genetically modified foods because she thinks those can be easily counterfeited.
With some chemicals which...
Yes, with some chemicals. So organic foods, I think, are better.
So you don't buy stuff from the supermarket?
We do. You can't be sure. You can't be 100% sure. But although I keep asking, she says, we are safe, we are safe, we are safe. But I don't know whether we're 100% safe. But counterfeits, we do. We get counterfeits. It's not, of course, food and medicine are of very big concern, but there are other things. You go and buy a shoe and it is counterfeited. You buy a suit and it is counterfeited.
What about when you're going to your farm? You drive a car.
Yes.
The brakes. You see accidents every day.
Yes. You see, this is a very big challenge. We have the capacity to know that which is counterfeited or not, because that is a very important thing. And that's where I think government should come in and assist to identify those goods which are counterfeited and those which are not. because the consuming population can be mobilized. But even when they are mobilized, will they be able to know all the things that are counterfeited? And I think the answer is no. They may know some,
so
they may not
they may not know.
others.
So your view is that government should reinforce and support with the necessary resources all the regulators and the enforcers to do their part.
Absolutely.
Because
if government is losing revenue in these counterfeits, it should take interest because it is losing revenue. And it should strengthen the regulators so that that revenue is not lost. At least mind about their revenue. Yes. And in the process, identify those goods which are counterfeited and those which are not counterfeited, and not take, as you suggested, not take taxes from counterfeited goods. That is sad. Yes.
Okay. I think we need to, our time is up, but I cannot end here without asking you how you managed to go seamlessly into retirement life, because you are looking all shaped up, you're looking good. It looks like retirement is the best thing that has happened to you. How many people have challenges? They really live in fear of retirement. Can you share some nuggets of wisdom here? What should we do to look like you?
Well, I don't know how I look, but I hope I look good. I think this is just a state of mind, how you want to live. I am a simple man. I retired simply. Fortunately, all my children are adults. Of course, in African setting, you never cease to have dependents, but I don't have a lot of obligations. Usually what frustrates people who have retired is loss of income. I had fairly prepared myself.
Since you are in a bank, the money was there, so.
No, it's not about that. Actually, I left the bank with a lot of debts. But the important thing is that I don't have a lot of costs, and the little money I get
is enough to take you around?
Is enough for me and my wife to play. Both of us play golf. We play golf.
So from here you might go to the golf course and...
No, it's late. I'll go home.
Yes.
I'll go home. But it's enough to look after us.
So it's possible, what you're saying is possible to retire happy. It doesn't have to...
But it needs to be planned for. If you don't plan for it, it can be a challenge.
And you don't need to
and
plan.
Usually the challenge is income. And you get a shock, because when you retire as an executive in a bank, you are getting good money. And suddenly you are getting good money, everything is provided, you know. You are living like a king. Well, a king, but you are like a servant also, because you work hard.
So you're doing catch up now for those 40, 50 years of hard work.
Yeah, it was hard work, real hard work. In a bank, you have to work hard. So
you work hard and earn big.
Not really. You only start earning big when you are in your late years. When you are a middle manager, the pay is average. Yeah, until you become a chief executive, and by the time you reach those levels, you are about to retire. But what bothers me most, and has become my full-time occupation, is to advise my children about morals, about how not to be part of the current trend, how not to want to get rich quick. I know it is a challenge because they see what their peers are doing. At one time, actually, my son asked, because I used to tell him, and then he said, but you know, and he was at university. came and said, but Daddy, my when I talk like you tell me, other students say I'm mad.
They laugh at him.
They laugh at him. Say you'll die poor. Unfortunately, they live in a situation where people are not doing the right thing. I don't know.
And it is okay not to do the right thing. It's actually promoted.
Yes, and it is okay not to do the right thing. So they get challenges, I'm sure. And maybe if they themselves don't do the right thing, they will not want to tell me they're not doing the right thing because I tell them not to do the wrong thing. And I think it is a challenge for the young generation. And that's what really destroys society. And I think this counterfeit scourge hails from that, wanting to get rich quick, wanting to be like the Joneses.
To get the mansions and all these things and the big cars.
And you really want you find a chap who is 32, 33, has a mansion. How?
Your message to the audience, to the viewers, what is the right thing they need to do in respect of counterfeits?
Really, for me, I think it should be like a multi-pronged approach. First, I think government needs to strengthen regulation, put the right laws in place. I don't know where they already exist, but if they
There are laws, but they are not enforced.
Yeah, but they should be punitive enough so that the culprits are brought to book if they are caught. And of course, there will be culprits all the time, but bring them to book and let them pay for their sins. There should be education of consumers. And of course, when I say regulation, government should also identify which goods are counterfeit and which goods are genuine. The other thing, of course, is to enhance people's incomes so that they can afford
the quality genuine products.
Yes,
Mr. Patrick Kabonero, thank you so much for granting us time to talk to the League of the Genuine. We are super excited to have had a senior citizen like you to share with us your long experience, and the message is we should do the right thing. We should do the right thing by buying and selling genuine products. Like he says, we would like to extend a special thanks to our audiences who have followed us since we began. It is now more than half a year that we're doing this, and we appreciate very much the support. Those who click the like button, those who share, those who are always tuning in every Friday, the only show on the planet that talks about the sensitive but ignored subject of counterfeits, fake products, substandard products. So until next episode, we would like to end here by appealing to you as always to always don't be fake, buy and sell genuine only.